Welcome to the Playground Talks podcast, a podcast for busy parents who want to own their parenting style and develop a stronger sense of how to handle challenging situations. I am Tamia Friat, your host and a mother of three. In this podcast, I will interview psychologists, practitioners, behavioral therapists, teachers, and other experts about topics that bother all of us as parents so you can get both the parenting principles and practical aspects that resonate with you, give you confidence and joy. Hey there! So a few months ago, I went to this workshop where we were introduced to the Life Keto martial arts. And in this workshop, there was some kind of magical integration between using and moving the body, and at the same time working on self-awareness, resilience, and social skills. So this workshop was so meaningful and powerful that I right away approached Jonathan Hewitt, who is the founder of Life Keto Martial Life and Life Education, and asked him to be a guest on my show. And I am so honored that he agreed. And so today we have Jonathan Hewitt, who graduated from Emory University, got a degree in psychology, and he's been teaching martial arts and life skills to children age 3 to 19 for about 3 decades. And he's also the author of the book Life Keto Parenting Tools to Raise Happy, Confident Kids from the Inside Out. So let's get going. Enjoy it.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How was your vacation?
It was really nice. Really, really nice. A lot of quality family time and just being, usually the days are very, very full. And so they were full, but in a different way, just spending time with family and training outside. It was very nice. How was your break?
It was nice. We also had guests. So it seems like you had a really present with your family.
Yeah, no, it's such an interesting thing. I mean, I think for most of us, our days are so full, whatever that may be. And family, even just taking time for family can be, there's so much joy and beauty. And also it's plenty of opportunities for buttons to be pressed for everybody too. It's such an interesting dance. It's like, I remember when, I think I told you this when I started asking people about parenting a long time ago. And people said that the most common thing I heard was you can't imagine how much love you'll experience. And also how many of your own issues get like brought to the surface and exposed. And I think both are very true. It's very advanced ninja training.
Well, yeah, it's when you get so much time and then your own things just popping up.
Yeah.
And you can run away because you don't have to, the things that you have to do. So
Exactly. I remember many years ago, someone sent us this article and it was like talking about like in relation to like having like spiritual gurus type of things. And they were saying the mom wrote this article saying like my spiritual guru in diapers or something like that. It's like the baby was her teacher because was showing her everything about herself, her beauty and her great challenges.
that's so true. When I started working like 15 years ago, and my colleague told me that my kids will be the best reflection of myself, everything within it, like my fears, the boundaries I'm putting to myself. And back then I remember that I didn't fully understand it. And from kid to kid, I just realized how powerful the thing he said was.
Yeah. I remember my wife was saying like, I wish people would let you understand more like the challenges as well as the joy, especially in the early years if your child's getting up all the time throughout the night and just so many things, that make it very hard on your basics, essentials for well-being. So it's definitely amazing training.
I like it. Kids are your best trainer.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, because the thing is, there's so much love and there's so much investment too. Like we want the best for our kids. Like I see with my daughter, for example, there's so many things that I would like to teach her, right? And tell her and for her to understand and do. But really she gets the most from just seeing who I am and how I interact with her and others. But I just want to say, okay, these are the most important things you need to know in life. This is how you do it. Ready, go. And every time I try to do that, even though I know that, I still thought, if she could just understand this about friends or whatever it is, then it would be better. But it's not that way usually. It's more of how am I being with her and friends and my wife and people and how am I being with myself? And so it's very interesting how often in teaching life, it's not through telling, it's through doing. And then the kids reflect to us so much innocence and purity and raw emotion at times and showing us all of humanity and then everything that comes up in us, the protection, our ambitions for them, our hopes for them, our fears for them. So it's, it's so complex,
Right.
such beauty.
It's like you wish you could give her the manufacturer instruction of how to operate in this life.
Exactly. Exactly. And we can, but I think the biggest thing is how we're doing it. It's so different to be like trying to tell someone something instead of they're just like, oh, when I'm around that person, I see them being present and loving and kind and authentic and seeing them use their challenges to grow and not to blame and not to be mean to themselves. And so there's so many things in our interactions that really we are teaching, but not by quote teaching.
Yeah. I think recently I read that 80% of what their children getting from their parents is by seeing them and observing them. It's by the parents actually modeling stuff and not by talking to them.
Exactly.
And it's powerful. You get to understand that you rather look at yourself and see how do you react.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing too, because as like whether for many of us, in addition to being parents, let's say that we're in service industries, whatever that may be, like for me as an educator. And so there's so many things that I do feel like, oh, if they can understand this and get this. So understanding is part of it, but it has to be age appropriate and, not too much talking and all that, but it's in the doing and the experiencing of life that we all really learn. And there are those moments we hear something like, oh, wow, that's great. But really it's living and learning how to live and how to support that in others. And the best way is by us doing that and by loving and accepting who someone else is and supporting them on their journey in the way that's right for them, not in the way that we think would be better, which is so easy to do.
We tend to go to this direction of, I know how to do it and put it in a really fixated structure. And then it's part of being a parent, I guess, is let that part of you go and just respect the child for whoever it is. So, I totally agree. And I'm so happy to have you here because when I was in your workshop, you were talking a lot about inner strength and inner self and working from the inside out. I'm wondering what brought you to make this journey and research for your inner self?
Great question. Like many of us, I think we start growing up and we're just living without even being aware of who we are and what we're doing. And where I grew up, I think a lot of places are like this in the Western culture. I don't know if this was everyone's experience, but this was my experience looking back at it. It was all about how you were received by others, how you looked, what you possessed, your status. And so it was always jockeying on some level for positioning, and whether it was on the sports field or in academics or with friends or in the family, there was always this competition, but it wasn't like a healthy competition with myself. It was this drive to win and even more a drive not to lose. And so it was just so primal and survival and emotionally survival as well. And so it really wasn't a very healthy way of living, but I didn't know that. I just thought this is the way we do it. And then after I graduated from Emory, at that point, I already started really searching and feeling like something's not right. I was really fortunate. Not only did I get to do, a lot of athletics and do well in school and had a chance where I was doing some like TV commercials and some print modeling and things like that, where I was around some of the most beautiful people in the world in New York City in these auditions. And then where I grew up, there are a lot of very successful business people. So I feel like I got to see a lot of success at a very young age. And then at some point I realized that, wow, all these people are like rich and they look good and they have these things, but I don't really see anyone truly happy from my perspective. There was like something missing, but I didn't know what that was. Some people are aware of these things. I just wasn't. And so when I graduated college, I moved to New York and I was speaking to somebody and I said, I feel like my life's incredible, but I feel like I have a hole in my heart. Like something's missing. I don't know what that is. And this guy said to me, well, most people feel that through some kind of spirituality. And I was like, well, what is that? What do you mean? I didn't even understand. And he recommended this book called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. And I read this book and it was like an athlete searching for a deeper meaning. I so resonated with the story. And I was like, oh my goodness, there's another way. There's another way. I didn't know that. So after I read that book, I just decided, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life as far as, because at that point I was kind of going in this business direction or, Wall Street where I grew up. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to dedicate my life to realizing this inner strength and sharing that with others. I guess I don't even know if I knew that at that point, but I always worked with people. I was always kind of somewhat in like a leadership role. So I was, wow, this is what I want to do. I want to find this inner strength and I want to live my life from this. And so that just took me on this journey of different trainings and teachers and learning from things that I liked, learning from things that I didn't like, and trying to figure out a simple, clear path of not only finding this inner strength, but living daily life, having healthy relationships and family and work and bringing it all together. So that was kind of my deep yearning, was finding the deepest place to live from and then live life fully from there.
So you sort of followed your passion for this inner self discovery.
Yep.
And I find it really related to the podcast talking about parents and self-awareness of the parents. So in your book, you mentioned that before you address the child, you need to first address yourself, and you call it ground and connect. So I was wondering, what is it for you to ground and connect, and what is self-awareness for the parents?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll answer that. I just want to say one thing first. Every time I've done parenting workshops, a very, very common thing I hear from parents is, I came here thinking I was going to learn how to, like, on some level, control my kid, not control in a negative way, but like get them to do what I want them to do. And I realized being here, it's all about me becoming more aware and learning how to flow with my inner thoughts, feelings, fears, ambitions, and with life. And so grounding and connecting is getting out of our fearful, insecure, frantic, fast-paced mind and emotions and getting grounded, getting rooted. Like if you picture a tree with deep roots that's also able to blow in the wind. And so how do we ground ourselves? And really connecting to a lot of times in training that I do with different things, like I teach a meditation class, for example, and we often will do like getting clarity in our brain, like getting perspective and clarity in our brain, feeling the power and courage of our heart, and then feeling the roots of your lower belly button area into your legs. So you have this flow of, I'm grounded, I'm in my heart, and I have perspective. And so to me, that's grounding and connecting and flowing. I feel like the flow is really important, because if I'm just grounded, I can be very dense. If I'm just coming from love, which is usually if I only picked one, I would pick that personally. But if I'm only coming from love, sometimes it's easy to not feel grounded, and sometimes not to get a broader, higher perspective. And if I'm only coming from this higher, broader perspective, sometimes it's easy to feel a little disconnected from the love and the roots. So just that feeling of you're the earth, you're the air, you're the love, you're the sky, the water.
So in your book, you also wrote some practical thing that you can breathe and take some time in, which I think it's brilliant. This time in thing is just like, it's actually sometimes what you need as a parent, when you have a challenge moment and you feel like you can't really handle it in the moment. So you just take it for yourself and just accept the fact that you are a human being. Would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think even though I've done this for decades, I still see myself doing this. I feel that we have such an idea of how we're supposed to be, right? And usually it's like a doing instead of just being who we are and being human. And another book that I wanted to write that I haven't, just because of daily life, was really that thing about that there's the human and the being, and they seem to contradict, because one, the human is thoughts and feelings, and the being is just presence. And so I feel that we've gotten so caught up in the doing and the thinking and the planning and the worrying that there isn't as much in this being. And I think as we flow, it allows us just to accept and embrace who we are right now. Like, we should not be different today, because if we were with what we know, we would be. And so to really not only just say, okay, I accept who I am, but really like, wow, I am who I'm supposed to be right now. And with where I'm at in my own development, how do I embrace and grow and take these steps? And we have a tool called the AB formula to accept and baby step. And to me, just to like embrace, like, hey, you know what? Like, I've been teaching for decades. I still react. I'm a dad. I still react. That's human. And for me to pretend that I don't, or to think that I shouldn't, is not being fair to myself or to others. It's to see that. What do I do with it? How do I learn from it? How do I help others learn from it, instead of pretending that I'm not reacting? So I think that thing of accepting and embracing our humanity, and also taking accountability for our beingness, like not to try to ignore either one of them, but to flow with them.
So for me, my takeaway from what you said is not only accepting that I'm a human being, but it's also modeling for the child that it's okay to be human. And sometimes I'm upset and frustrated and I have whatever it is. And the second thing is when I'm taking this time in, I'm working on this inner conversation that you just mentioned is how do I feel and what do I do with it? How do I treat this? And in the next step, you say to connect to your child and not to his behavior. So could you please share with us what that means?
I think it's so easy to get caught up in someone's behavior because that's what we see. Like we see them, or even their big emotions. That's what we see. But if you act, like the other day, I was speaking to my daughter and she was speaking about somebody and I said, that I completely agree with what you're saying as far as like that situation and how that could be hurtful or this person and so on and so forth. I said, what do you think's behind that for that person? Why do you think they would do that? And she goes, well, I think they're insecure. I said, yeah. And so when some people are insecure, they attack, some pull away, some freeze. And so we all have our ways that we do that. And so not that we don't need to say something and not that it's totally fine to say, hey, that's not right or whatever it may be, but that understanding gives you some perspective with it. And then when you're relating to that person, our own reaction, like if their reaction is to attack and ours to pull away, neither one are the healthiest ones, right? So how do we learn to be in our power and interact with each other and invite the child to be in their power instead of, you're bad, go do this thing. And then it's really much more about, hey, I see you for who you are and I accept you for who you are and I love you for who you are. Even if that behavior is not acceptable or appropriate, we're still going to love and accept you for who you are, right? Like the other day, my daughter apologized for something, which is not a big deal at all, but in her mind it was. And I was like, that is so small. Like, I love and accept you for who you are. Even if you did something 1,000 times worse than that, that's your behavior. But I love you for who you are, right? And sometimes I'll ask her, why do I love you? And she's for being me. I'm like, yes, for being you. But even though she says that, to know that, and we all can learn that in many more levels, right? I'm sure every time she makes a mistake or does something that she thinks is good, that either gives more love or less love. And as parents, how do we catch ourselves doing that? Oh, you're a good girl. Now I'm going to give you more love. You were bad. I'm going to remove the love instead of I love you and I accept you. How do we learn to work with these joys and challenges in your day so you don't lose sight?
I really love how you took the term unconditional love to your kids and describe it so simply, just to say, oh, I am upset with my kid, but yet he's my kid. And I connect from a curiosity point of view and to just understand where he comes from. Thank you so much for saying that's brilliant. And I want to talk about punishment and reward. But before we're getting into it, I want to ask you if you resonate with the term parenting authority.
It's interesting. Sometimes at work, somebody will say something like, oh, well, Sensei Jonathan's my boss. And every time I hear that, I feel a little bit of an internal cringe because it seemed like there's a separation instead of a team. And so I understand we all play different roles and a different time in a child's development. There's different needs and all of that. Of course, we have to be age appropriate. But I really think about how it's just so much healthier to have a team approach with everything. Because as soon as at work, at home, wherever I am, as soon as I say there's me and there's them, all of a sudden there's this separation, right? And so authority to me, it gives that feeling of like, whether it's me being the authority or you or someone else, it's like, we know and you don't know. And the thing is, we have a hard enough time managing ourselves, right? If myself and every other parent listening was really so masterful at mastering ourselves, so many of the issues that we so-called have in parenting would seem so small. So many of the real things are happening in our own reactions. And because we were either parented that way or have this idea that we are the parent and we are the authority, it creates a tension, a stress. And it's so important, going back to the step one of modeling being the number, like in Life Keto, as you've referred to, we have different parenting pillars. And the first one is modeling. Well, how do we do that, right? And the second, we're talking about how do we relate to the child? Well, we can't relate to the child if we're not relating to ourselves. And so if I could, I'd just like to say one quick thing about the modeling and then going back to where you were, because one thing is a concept to say, okay, I'm going to be self-aware. I'm going to take responsibility, but how? And that's what always fascinated me. Like, what are the practices? when I speak to different therapists or people I co-facilitate with, I'm like, well, what is your practice for helping people find their inner strength and deal with their challenges? Because ultimately that, in my mind, that's the practice. How do we deal with our fears and insecurities? And how do we feel our true power? And so I've made it, in my mind, really simple. I've broken it down to the 3 Bs, the body, the breathing, and the brain. And so like you were talking about the brain, that self-talk, how do we coach ourselves? How do we be a good friend to ourselves? With our body, how do we use our body in a way that's healthy and powerful so it feeds us to feel our power instead of all the different things that happen in our body? And then the breathing. I train with some world famous warriors, and I'm personally not into like fighting, and it's not my thing, right? But when I first started training with these guys, I'm like, wow, these guys are in life or death situations. And they talk about using their breathing as like one of their main foundations to be able to be present and aware and ready for everything they have to do in life and death situations. So I always like to say, wow, they could do that on the battlefield. How do I apply that to myself as a parent and as a human being? And so the simple thing for people is just to find a rhythm to their breathing where it's continuous. And the way you breathe helps you feel how you want to feel. So if you were to breathe slower, especially on the exhale, that tells your brain and your body to calm down. If you breathe faster, especially on the inhale, it wakes you up and gives you more energy. So finding that balance, there's a lot of training in this that we do, but finding that balance of what speed and quality of breathing do you want to do to nurture how you want to feel is so empowering as a parent. And that self-talk in our brain of focusing on what we're doing and being mindful and the quality of our posture. So this modeling, then when I'm interacting with my child and loving and accepting them for who they are, I'm not standing above them with this authority, right? Hey, we're here as a team. Let me enter your world. Where are you? Let me be with you. Let me connect with you. Okay, now let's address this situation that we need to address.
So the alternative you're proposing is saying, let's connect and support the kid and give him this great tool that you just mentioned, the 3 Bs and the 3 types of breathing that helps you to come to your center again, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, the goal would be, as a parent, how do I find this flow, this deep place of peace and purpose and fulfillment within myself? How do I interact with my child from that place to support that in them? Because if they have this internal operating system of being present and mindful and confident and kind and flowing, everything they do, they're going to feel their best and do their best. So the most important thing is, how do I support that operating system for them to go, oh, you know what? That wasn't a very good choice I just made. I wonder why I did that. Let me reflect for a moment. What would be a better choice next time I'm in that situation? So that's way better than the kid saying, oh, I'm going to get in trouble, or I'm going to get caught, or I better hide this. Oh, I better not tell them, right? No, we're learning to live. And as a family, we're a team learning how to live. All of us, we're parents. As we all know, we're not done with our learning how to live with ourselves or in relationships.
Yeah, that's so true. So I'm coming from an engineering background, and I always says to my husband, who's also an engineer, that kids and also parents are not in a steady state. So you just have to accept and be more flexible to deal with it. And you actually taught us a great tool, and it's written in your book, which is the ice, river, and puddle effort. If you could please share with us what that means.
Definitely. I'll try to give some structure to all this, just so if people are listening, it's not all over the place. So the general idea that what we do is we have these parenting pillars that help us relate to our child. And then we have these tools for life and learning. The tools help us how to live, and it helps us, for example, model. And these are the tools that we teach in all of our life keto training, whether it's martial arts or parenting or spiritual flow or mind body flow or girl power or teacher workshops. It's always coming to these tools of how we live in this flow, which we call the river. So the general idea is, in any moment, in 3 big categories, we're either over tense, tight, rigid, stressed, which we call ice because we feel stuck and frozen and we're like that usually, or, we're exploding with uncontrolled emotions, which is very easy to happen. Or the flip side is puddle. We just feel so lazy and bored and disengaged. And it's easy to flip or feel both of them at times, but it's very natural to be in these states because our body and brain are hardwired for survival. So being on the seesaw is very easy. And then naturally we go into these states of being, if you will, or being like nature, if you will, or just being and being present and doing our best. And we call that the river. And so since we've written that book, and today more than ever, I feel this flow state, this river is so powerful because it's not like saying, oh, ice is bad, puddle is bad. I reacted, I'm bad. I was a great parent in that moment. Oh, look, my kid did better than that kid. It's getting out of that game of like the comparing and the competing and just saying right now in this moment, how do I nurture my river with my body, my breathing, and my brain? What do I need in this moment? What's the next step for me to deepen my river? And so having these three big buckets, if you will, of ice, puddle, river. Oh, I'm really tense. Okay. What do I feel like I can do with my three B's right now to release some of that energy? Because it's pent up energy that our body created for survival. But maybe it's not a survival situation. So how do we use that energy instead of getting stuck? And so that's the general idea of these buckets. And then so in life, the river effort is in everything I'm doing, like right now, speaking with you. How do I be present to the quality of what I'm putting into this moment? Instead of me saying, you've got to get it like this. This is how you have to be a parent. Or, oh, whatever. You just chill. It'll all work out. And, don't worry about anything. Which is true, but just that you can hear in my voice, there's like a disconnect. I'm not really engaged with the moment. So river effort is being so in the moment, so present, so in your heart, so in your body and your breathing, and you flow, doing your best with what the tasks at hand.
I started using it with my kids and I found it really helpful because they can actually visualize themselves. And then once I reflect to them and say, well, it seems you're icy or a puddle, you look in their eyes and you see that they get it, that they get what you're talking about. And just before we're moving to the practical aspect of that, I was wondering if you can share with us what's the background, what's causing a child to be icy or a puddle.
Yeah, I think if you look at human beings, again, I mentioned this, but I think it's really important for us to understand and see, like, as humans, the deepest thing in our animal system, if you will, is survival. So our brain is constantly looking for danger. And so, am I safe? And so as children, it's very easy to feel unsafe because if you really look at it, I mean, the world is huge and so many things are out of control. And so that if they have any idea of that at all, it can seem so overwhelming of, oh my goodness. And then even just within our family, we're so much bigger than our kids usually. I know when kids get older, they get bigger than us and all that usually. But the thing is, there's so many things about being a child that can make you feel small and insecure and not confident and afraid. Kids at certain ages don't know how to do so many things, right? They need us to feed them. When you're looking at the really, really young kids, they need us to take care of them, to do everything for them on some level. And so if you think about their computer being programmed, so much of it is, you're not enough. You need help. And so then from that place, for some people, they can be like, why even try? I'm not enough. And every time I do it wrong. Or somebody can be like, I've got to make this work. I've got to, I remember at some point as a kid losing in something and I didn't understand, like the winner got a reward and I didn't. And that hurt me so much. I don't really care about the reward, is more just the whole thing of they were acknowledged and I wasn't, and it felt so hurtful. And so I think that I took the thing of, okay, now I'm going to win. I'm not going to lose. And so I became icy in my operating system. Some people, like, even I look at my own family, some people said, you know what? I can't keep up with somebody or my brother or whoever. So I'm just going to give up. Right. If you can't keep up, you give up. Some people, if they can't keep up, they cheat or they fight or whatever. It's like we all have these things. And so to realize our natural tendencies, or our kids' natural tendencies, to judge themselves, to judge others, to give up, to fight, and to try to help them get a more flowing operating system.
So I'm hearing that it's more of getting the external acknowledgement and the fear of losing that makes someone really stressed and trying to work really hard. And that's what makes him icy. And then in the other side of the spectrum is being lazy and not to work so hard because you're sort of fearing of failure. So the interesting thing for me to realize is that both sides of the spectrum are not a healthy way to operate in the world. So if my kids is more like a puddle And it's sometimes easier as a parent to handle puddle, because they're not like the icy that tend to be aggressive. Am I right? Yes. So sometimes you think of the puddle state and says, okay, so that's how it is and that's it. But what you're emphasizing here is that both things are not healthy. And we as a parent has the role to support them and move them from this icy or puddle place to the river effort. And I think it's really powerful thing to realize, which leads me to the next question. So many times we are overwhelmed with things that we need to do and achieve. And you mentioned it before, but I want to talk a little bit deeper about the AB steps for resilience and how to actually cope with overwhelming in the real world.
Yeah, I think what happens for so many of us is we're starting our day on some level of that we're already behind. I mean, I know every day I have say 20 things in theory that I'm supposed to do on some level or would like to do. And the reality is it's probably too many things, right? Or some people maybe don't give enough to challenge themselves. So I think we're entering in our day not from a clear place. And then when we get to step 8 of tension, we're like, oh my goodness, how am I going to breathe? And how can I make this work? And so we're already entering tension. And so like in Sistema, one of the main martial arts we teach these guys I refer to, and in Tai Chi, for example, we start from day one of practicing being in our breath, having a healthy posture, being present to what we're doing. And so we're starting from the beginning of training how we want to be in more extreme situations, let's say. Where many martial arts I've trained in, we just go full out, like as you can say, icy. And some people, like 10 years down the road, may pop out and flow. Not all. For me, I was getting more tense after decades of training that was my own system, right? So I think it's really great to start saying, okay, I'm going to start practicing being in my river, in my flow from the get-go. Because I think it's not realistic to say to ourselves as parents, like, okay, I'm going to apply this AB formula, which I'll talk about when I'm stressed out or when I get angry. That's great, but it's really better to learn to have a practice in our moment-to-moment daily life that helps us be who we want to be and not just, oh, I'll meditate when I get mad at my kid. Because that's like a Band-Aid, right? It's not really looking at the deeper thing. And so the AB formula really is about, there's 2 parts to me. One is just like, okay, I reacted to my daughter again. Okay, I'm going to step back and I'm going to become aware. Like, wow, I've seen myself do this in this area. Let me accept this and kind of understand, reflect, and even embrace, like, wow, I must be afraid. What am I afraid of? Why am I acting this way? So that first A, in that acceptance, there's the awareness, there's the acceptance, even like the embracing, like, hey, you know what? You're afraid, you're scared, and that's okay. That's part of being a human being. So that first part is very healthy and human, like the most loving mom embracing us. And then the B is the baby step of like, okay, well, in this current place where I am, what do I feel is like a baby step that can help me become more of who I want to become in this area, or learn this skill, like a step that I actually can do today and that I could be in my river and do and not force something. And then what's another step tomorrow? Because then in the journey of growing, we actually are practicing being in our river each step of the way, instead of thinking, okay, I'm going to fight to get to this goal. I'm going to be ice. And then one day when I get to that goal, then I'll be a river. It doesn't work that way. It's every moment we're training. And so I love the AB formula for it. Doesn't matter if it's an external skill or an internal skill of mindfulness, whatever it is. How do I just embrace where I am and take a baby step in that? And every time we do that, we're building this deep internal resilience. Like last night in the teen adult martial art class, I did it with the kids too. We start with kids as young as 3 in our training. And so even with, it's always age appropriate, but I had the teenagers and the adults in a push-up position. And I said, all I want you to do right now is focus on your breathing. Notice in your body where tension's trying to come up and try to breathe through it, and use your brain, your mind to coach yourself, whether you're focusing on the tension or somewhere else to release it. And when your body gives up and you collapse, I want you to still feel your power, right? So it's like not being like, oh, I couldn't stay up as long as that person, therefore I'm not as good. It's like, no, feel your power even when you go down. So that's building resilience inside of them, even when they so-called fail. Like, oh, my friends stay up longer than me. It doesn't matter. By you staying strong in that, you're building the resilience. So you're accepting where you are and you went a little further than you did last time, maybe. And so, or that you thought you could. And so all this internal practice of accepting and baby stepping as a parent, as a human being is so empowering to feel our inner strength. Inner strength is not just like something you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to live for my inner strength. It's a practice.
So it seems like you're building for each of your students his own scale.
Yep.
And not comparing to someone else. And this is just the same thing that you said before about not comparing and not getting the external reward or punishment, but working to grow as a parent and for your child.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, I know my whole life without knowing, I was constantly looking for that validation, right? And even today, being who I am at my age and how long I've taught for and all these things. And then I was training with this teacher I was referring to. And I just felt like, wow, I'm really training internally. I'm really doing my work. And then there were like 100 something people on from around the world. And they started acknowledging me and telling people to watch me. And then inside, it made sense to me on a level because of how I felt like I was training. But as soon as he said that, and then he goes, oh no, now you're like doing it. Like, all of a sudden the validation felt great. And then I felt pressure, like, oh, I have to be something different than who I am. And then there was like the lack of validation or the opposite, like, oh, you didn't do it right. And then I started seeing in the classes after that, every time he would say something, I got that jolt of like, oh, that felt good, right? And if he didn't, I could think, oh, why didn't he give me attention? Or why did he give it to that person? And so it's normal. It gives us like, adrenaline. It gives us chemicals in our brain that feel good. It's chemical, it's scientific. But deeper is to say, you know what? I want to do my best because that's what makes me feel my best. Whether somebody tells me I'm doing a good job or not, whether I win or not. So I think training people to look to themselves. Do you like the effort you're putting in right now? Like this one kid in class asks me all the time, Sensei Jonathan, how am I doing? And I was like, how does it feel for you? Do you feel like you're paying attention, doing the best you can do right now? I think you're doing great, but that doesn't matter. What matters is what you feel. And so I don't want to be cold. I want to give the love and acknowledgement, but I want their love and acknowledgement to be more important than mine.
Get that. And I also hear you talking a lot about the prevention system, also with the AB, rather than handling a situation and getting to this overwhelming situation is to be more aware and work in a daily base on this baby step. So it seems like a daily work of building resilience.
Yeah. And the thing that's interesting is going back to a little while ago, we were talking about insecurity and fears and things like that. So humans want to survive. Humans want to feel more pleasure and less pain, right? These are just fundamental things. So without knowing it, we're all operating in a way that we think is going to give us more pleasure and less pain. So an icy person, let's say in the moment, thinks if I could just get this thing done, then I'm going to have more pleasure and have less pain. A puddly person feels like by not trying in the moment, no one's puddly all the time, but in the moment, without knowing it, by not trying, I'm going to have less pain and maybe more pleasure. So for me personally, by practicing living from this inner strength, it lets me feel my best and do my best. So it's kind of like everything we're all looking for, but I feel like we're hardwired and conditioned to look in the wrong place for it. So when you just say, I'm going to be the best me, what does that look like moment to moment? And that allows us to experience more pleasure and less pain and also know how to flow with both of them. So we don't make either one so important because the experience of living from your inner strength and power feels better than the external rewards and pleasures. And it knows how to deal with the pain that we're so afraid of. You see it and process it in a different way than we do from avoiding it or being controlled by it.
So it seems like doing the process will lead to have the results we're wishing for. And so you operate from a place of, I'm working on the process. Well, we have got a lot here. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I know that in this podcast, we've jumped around, and sometimes as a listener, it's harder to follow. I think just a quick summary. I think the number one thing is the energy behind the perspective behind what we're doing. So if we're really clear of our intention to be a present, loving, kind, authentic, supportive parent. I think, you don't need like techniques and stuff. They're there to support us to be that. Like one mom who used to come to our school had 3 boys, and one of the teachers said, "How are your boys so happy?" And she goes, "The only thing I know is anytime we have any challenges, I just go back to love. I go back to hugging and to love." And so I think that love and acceptance is really like, what else do we need? But to love and accept others, we also have to love and accept ourselves, right? And so I think just saying the simple thing is, how do I be present and loving and accepting to myself? How do I be present and loving and accepting to each person, each child, each person in my family, individually and as a team? And how do we work as a team? And using our body, breathing, and brain, having tools to practice that are very tangible, but not just an idea, help us figure out how to find this flow, this river, and to know that we're going to become ice and puddle. And don't worry about that. Just celebrate the times we remember. So it's really very simple. Taking care of my river, my 3 Bs, and treating you and being with you in a way that's supportive of that in you, and learning from our mistakes to grow instead of getting stuck on how many failures we have. Every time, learn and get stronger. So my intention was always to make a very simple, practical system that when people come to a workshop or a class, it can be the only time they ever do it, and they have an understanding of how to practice in their day.
So please share with us, where can people find you?
Yeah, so our website is lifekido, lifekido.com. And one thing that I feel really passionate about is supporting the whole family. So for parents, some parents come to parenting workshops. Some just read our book, which you can get on Amazon. Some parents like to come to like workshops for themselves, like not just parenting. And I have an ongoing program called Spiritual Flow, which is a meditation type of class that's not just sitting, it's standing, it's moving, and it's applying it to your body and to your life. So it's very practical.
And Zoom.
Definitely. So we still have Zoom martial art classes. I also have the Mind, Body Flow and Spiritual Flow. They're online. And then I also have a leadership program I'm doing online. So I definitely do quite a bit online as well as in person.
It's great. So if we have parents, even not in Central Time, they can pop in and get all your tools for life.
Definitely.
Thank you so much. I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of practice. So thank you so much for coming and for sharing those tools for life and for being so genuine with whatever you developed in your life.
My pleasure. Thank you. And for everyone, take one baby step, whatever that is for you, the next step for you on being the fullness of you as a human, accepting yourself as a parent, accepting and loving and connecting with your child, because it's just such a better way of living. So thank you for having me here.
Hey again, I know that was one of the longest episodes, so thank you for listening until now. I think we got a lot, and let's go over the main 2 things. We got the tools of the icy, puddle, and river effort. And so the icy is when someone is trying too much and feeling stuck, pressured, or stressed. The puddle effort is when someone is trying too little and feeling lazy or bored. And then the river effort is when someone is putting their hurt and they're giving all they can do and they feel good, confident, and fulfilled. The other thing we talked about is the A-B step, and A stand for accept, which is simply be aware of where you are today, be kind and patient with yourself, and take responsibility instead of blaming others. The B stands for baby steps, which is to take a step in the direction you want to go and make a step you can handle today, which means not to overwhelm yourself with a huge goal. In the show note, you can find the link to the in-person and virtual classes Life Keto is providing. And I highly recommend, if you want to dive into all the tools and the pillars of Life Keto, life education, so read the book. It's great. Talking about baby steps just give us the best timing to talk about habits. So next episode, we'll start diving into habits with Michelle from Calmer Kids. And I would love for you to subscribe and get more of these reliable resources Playground Talks podcast offer. And please share it with friends and families so they can have it as well. Lastly, treat yourself and your kids with compassion and curiosity. Bye!